Hello, listeners. Hi, my name is Madhavi, and I'm so happy to have you on UppTalk. You have come to the right place if you want to learn about IT and do really cool things with your hands. We are not just another IT company when I say UppTalk. Think of us as your learning partner dedicated to helping you reach your full potential. We have top notch hands on courses to help you build your business, whether you are new to technology or want to move up in your current job. Let's look around this as our first step towards learning.
As we have discussed about the foundation object at the initial starting of the Employee Center, we have covered all the foundation objects. Among the other foundation objects we have, SAP has categorized some of the objects under the other foundation. That includes the workflow, reason, and dynamic work. These are also a part of foundation objects. If we want to go and create a workflow, if we want to go and create event reason or the dynamic work, we need to go into the configuration tool that is managed of page job and structure. That is one thing. But what is a workflow? What is the feature of the workflow? Before going into the workflow, we need to understand the process of the organization. Every organization, when the end user from the organization side, when they are making some changes in the employee profile, those changes, after making the changes, generally they will go and save those changes in the system. But if the management from the organization side, they don't want the changes should be saved automatically. It has to send a notification to the reporting manager or to the HR admin, whoever are the responsible approvals. And after receiving the notification, those approvals need to validate those changes. And then after that, once they are approving it, they have the authority that they can prove it or they can decline it. If any changes is required, they can decline it and send it back to the initiator. And that type of a mechanism where an approval can be able to approve the changes or they can be able to decline it. If they are approving it, that will be, or the system will automatically take that, accept that approved request, and the changes will be automatically updated in the system. This type of a mechanism we have in various organizations where they want to have this sort of process where an end user may be an employee or maybe a manager. When they make some changes in the employee profile, it should not save automatically, but it should send a notification for the approval for approving that changes. And this process, what SAP has done, the SAP has created a feature that features this called as a workflow. And with the help of the workflow, this process can be mapped out by the workflow feature. And whenever a changes is being done in the employee profile by any specific role, any role, either the employee or the manager's manager, that will send a notification for the approval with the help of this feature. That is the purpose of coming up with this feature, that is for less and more flow. And when they introduced this workflow, they decided that to keep this workflow feature under the foundation object. When the object is coming under the foundation object, for creating that record for that object, we will be using the manage of job and structure. Let me go and share my Excel again to go and see some part of the theoretical concept here. Then we go into the system. Generally, to summarize, let me go into my Excel first of all. to go ahead, we can able to say that workflow is something, a feature, which will help us to send a approval request whatever the change or whatever the action is performed in the system. And according to the action, a change has been occurred, and that change will trigger the workflow and the notification will be sent to the approvals. For that, we should have this workflow. Workflow is a foundation of that. To configure a workflow, we need to define the following aspects. We need to have the list of approvals. Then we should have the triggering of the workflow. Triggering of the workflow, then the notification has to be sent to the approval. For the process of implementing and configuring the workflow and the notification, these are the areas which we are focusing on. It specifies that first we have to set up a workflow. After setting up a workflow means in the setting up of the workflow we will go and see how to set up a workflow. But in a high level overview, we are going and seeing setting up the workflow, defining the rules to trigger the workflow. When you set up a workflow, to trigger the workflow, there should be some rules. Defining the rules, and there will be some features which we need configure for the workflow, and to get the workflow notification, we need to assign that particular workflow rules to the correct area that the workflow notification should be sent to, the approvals. When the workflow notification will be sent to the approvals, how the notification will be sent. For sending the notification, when we receive the notification, generally we will receive the notification in two ways, either into the SuccessFactors system or also into the email. Managing the workflow requires, for managing the workflow also in the home page, we require these tiles. In the to-do section, we should have the tiles. What are the tiles we should have? One is the approval request and one is the take action. Approval request specifies user can access the workflow request. Take action. User can review the alert. Whatever is the alert, which will be receiving that alert, which will be updating in the take action title. These two tiles should be there in the to-do section in the home page of the template. To make sure the workflow work as expected and notification as and successfully. For that also we should have the email settings. To have the proper email setting, what is happening? Workflow and alert notifications are sent to the employees through the email. It will get the notification in the to-do tile also, as well as in the email. Also, to get it into the email, we should maintain the POP, all email information. Well, we will maintain the email information. When we are creating the user, we have seen 4 methods: UDF, add new employee, 6 basic files. And also we have seen from the provisioning, when we are maintaining the employee data, in that we should have to maintain the valid email addresses. Then only the notification will be received in the email. That is one. Now coming into further, workflow screen is divided into 3 parts. Now we are discussing about the workflow. It's a foundation update. When you're going and creating the workflow from the manage also paste structure, it is divided into 3 parts. What are the 3 parts which has been divided into a pool, contributor, and the CC load. The workflow screen is divided into three parts. That is the approval contributor and the CC load. Let me go and show you in the system parallelly that we will have a clarity for that. Let me go into Manage of Job-Based Structure. I will go to Manage All Job-Based Structure. When I go into Workflow, you can see Workflow here. Select the workflow. Let's take some pull into this, and you can see here the valve workflow screen is divided into three parts. One is approval. This is the approval section. That is the step 1. Step 2, step 3, these are the approval section. Then we have a contributor, and then we have a CC load. These are the three sections workflow is divided. When you go into the approval section maximum, you can see step 1, step 2, step 3, maximum 6 steps. We can able to go and create the what you call level of approval. Step 1 will be somebody else, HR or somebody. Step 2 will be a manager. Step 3 will be manager's manager, like that. Maximum, we can go up to 6 levels of approvals. That only it is specified here. We can go up to maximum 6 levels of approvals in the workflow. Now coming into the approval. What is an approval section? What is the basic understanding of the approval section? It defined that they approve the workflow. Send that workflow, post a comment for the workflow, or it can reject the workflow. If an admin has enabled relevant features, they can also assign the workflow request to themselves or delegate the workflow. All these things will be carried in the approval section. What is the approval section? This step 1 to pull step 3, or maybe if we have step 6, or altogether step 1 to step 6 comprise of the approval section. What is the contribute section? What is the contributor? When you go into the contributor, what is the contributor section? Say it can provide the comment, they can provide who the contributor. Whoever is there under the contributor, they can provide the comment that can help the approval to make a decision. Contributors are also notified about the progress or the changes during the entire workflow. Whatever is the development which is going on for each workflow and whatever the changes which has been done, that is also getting notified to the contributor. Contributor can also post a comment to the approval if it will help us the approval to make a decision that all comes under the contributor. What is the CC role? They are only notified when the workflow is completed. When in the approval section you have a step 1, step 2, step 3. If all the steps, the approval is approved, the workflow, then the final notification in the CC row will be sent by the workflow is being completed. CC role is a section where whoever is being nominated as a CC role, they will be only getting an update. They cannot able to send a communication. They cannot be a part of an approval process. They will be only as an audience will be getting an update about this workflow is being completed. Finally, that is the part which will be coming under CC role. you can. Whoever we are selecting as a CC role for them also, they will be getting a final notification in the email also, and it can get the update in the home page also. This is the basic difference between the approver contributor and the CC role, where workflow screen is divided into 3 parts. Any questions here before going into the first part, that is the approval? Let me go passively and show you. When you go into the approval section, in the approval section we have an approval type. Let me go and show you here. In the approval section we have an approval type. In the approval type we can see here we have role, dynamic position and position relationship. When you are selecting the role here, suppose we are configuring a workflow approval type, we are selecting as a role. What are the roles which are there? That roles will be coming under the approval role. When you go and select here, you can see self-manager, manager, employee HR, matrix manager, custom manager, and second manager, and we also have additional managers. All these are the standard roles. What do you mean by the standard roles? These are the default roles which is already there in SuccessFactor, which is already defined by SAP. We don't have to do any creation of new role because these are the standard role which will be showing. If you are selecting the role as an approval type where it will come as approval role, then this will be there. What exactly is the role? To understand the role, the system determines the participants by the reporting line. When we are going and creating a user, we specify what is the role for that particular user. That only when we selecting the approval type as a role, system will automatically determine that the participant by the reporting line they can be an employee themselves or the managers, matrix managers, or the HR's repositories. That is coming under the role which we have seen right now. These are the standard roles. Now we are selecting here and I'm selecting as a manager means suppose I'm selecting here as a manager means it means that when the notification will be, when the workflow will be triggered, the first level, the notification will be sent to the manager. Because we have selected the approval type as a role, it will be sent to the manager. System never distinguish between that. The manager is HR manager or finance manager or sales manager. It will only specify that the system will only determine that the role as a manager and the notification will be sent to the manager. When the notification will be sent to the manager, that manager will be determined when you are going for a heavy and when you are mapping that manager to the employee. According to that, the notification will be sent. That is one thing. Now coming into the second one, that is let's go and take dynamic role. We will take, but let's discuss about the this one dynamic group. Let me go back here into the system, and in case if I am selecting the approval type as a dynamic group, when I'm selecting this as a dynamic group, you can see by default there are certain dynamic groups which is already showing here: payable HR department, finance department, all these other dynamic groups which is showing here. From where these dynamic groups are coming. To understand from where these dynamic groups are coming, for that we will duplicate a screen and there is a configuration tool to which the dynamic groups are defined. What is that configuration tool which is been there? The configuration tool is managed for flow group. Manage for flow group. When we go here and when we try to type manage workflow group, Manage Workflow Group. When you're going into the Manage Workflow Group, we can see here the H, R, H, V, P detail, all these things which are showing here that is being created under the dynamic group. What is the dynamic group? What is the dynamic group? What is the dynamic group? The participants in the dynamic. The participants are the group of users. In the dynamic group, we can able to go and create a group of users. If I want to see here where the dynamic group is being selected as a HR VP approval, what is the HR VP approval here? When I will type here HR VP and when I can enter, you can see HR VP. How many people are there in here? Only one user is there. Suppose if I am taking another dynamic group, let me take something else. Let me scroll down. Let me take talent approval. I'm taking talent approval as a dynamic group. Who all members are there in the talent? Let me go and type here talent. You can see talent approval. How many members are there? 2 members are there. How this group is being created? When you click on create new group, this looks like an RVP setup, right? Where you specify the name of the group and we can add by filtering the members in terms of this criteria. On the basis of the employee class, on the basis of the department, on the basis of the job code, on the basis of the username. On these criteria, we can add the members, and after adding the members, once you click on it, those members will be reflecting. Somebody has created this. You can see has a group named Talent Approval, and how many members are there? 2 members are there. In the future, if you want to add one more member, click on here. You can click add another and you can able to add them. Member, that is one thing. Whatever the dynamic groups are there, the dynamic groups are defined from where it is defined from Manage Workflow Group. From Manage Workflow Group, we can able to see all the dynamic groups. And in each dynamic group, there will be some members will be there. When we are selecting here in the workflow, the upload type as a dynamic group, and we are selecting the relevant dynamic group from here, from the list, here from where it is coming from, the Manage Workflow Group, which is already configured. And here it is the place where we are confusing the number of employees or the number of members in that particular group. When we are selecting the uploadable as a dynamic group, and this dynamic group may be having 2 members. When the notification will be triggered, when the workflow triggers and a notification will be sent, the notification will be sent simultaneously to both the members at a time. But it is not necessary that both the members has to approve it. Any one of the member can able to approve it and they can able to proceed further. Then what will happen? It will. Once the notification is approved by one of the member, it will be sent to the next level, that is the level 2. It is not necessarily that of all the members in that group need to go and approve it. Got it. That is the behavior of the dynamic group. Got it. That is about the dynamic. I was about to ask the question, like all approach should approve or anyone is. No notification there will be receiving at a time, but anyone can able to go and approve it. That is one thing. Then coming into the another behavior that is of dynamic. We have seen rule, we have seen dynamic rule. Now we are seeing dynamic rule. When we are selecting the dynamic rule, here also we can see lot of dynamic rules are populating. From where it is coming, I told in the other foundation we have in the workflow evaluation and dynamic rule as a foundation object, or these drop down results which are coming from the manage of job structure. When I duplicate the screen and when I select here the dynamic rule, when I select here the dynamic rule, we can see all the list would be coming from here. The business unit had chief people of user compensation. You can see here the same thing. Business unit had chief people of user compensation. All things will be coming from here. Suppose if I am taking randomly as a bank manager as a dynamic rule, workflow will be triggered in. Notification will be sent to the dynamic rule to understand who are the dynamic rule. First of all, what is a dynamic rule for that I just specified here? The participants that generally dynamically determine, according to the event, reasons for a date change or certain foundation object. Subject is also. To understand who are the dynamic rules, for that what we need to do, we have to go here and suppose we are selecting that particular dynamic rule. How it has been configured, I will go here and I will assign them. We can see here the dynamic rule assignment. Under that we have various columns are there. Drop classification department, division location. These are not mandatory fields. We can able to, if it is required, we can able to keep it blank. But we can see legal entity, although it is not a mandatory field. But generally we can see in customer system, they have defined various legal entities. A single company can have been located in France, Belgium, Australia, and Singapore, 4 different countries. 4 different entities are there and 4 different entities. They have their different headcounts in different locations that they can able to configure in the legal entity column. But further, when we go towards the right, although these are not mandatory fields, we have a approved type. Again, under this one vertical dynamic rule, we have again one more option is there, that is approved type. And this approved type, we can see it is a mandatory field. It is a mandatory part when you go into the approved type again. It is divided into 3 parts. Under dynamic rule, when a dynamic rule is being configured, now a comp dynamic compensation manager is a dynamic rule generally. What is a dynamic rule? Dynamic rule generally specifies where all the users are categorized under a same object, same foundation object. That is the position. Department, pay grade, event, reason. When they are all coming under same segment, we are going and creating a dynamic rule. Here we have created here we can see a dynamic rule is created by name compensation manager. When the compensation manager, the overflow will be triggered. It depends upon the approved type. Which in the dynamic rule, what is the approved type? Suppose the approved type is selected as a person, means that person, individual person, will act as a compensation manager. If we are selecting under the dynamic rule as a dynamic group, and under the dynamic group we are going and selecting a dynamic group where we have two members other. Both the two members will act as a dynamic rule, because under the dynamic rule, we have defined the approved type as a dynamic group. Both the members under the dynamic group will act as a dynamic rule. It means that notification will be triggered to a dynamic rule. It will be sent simultaneously to both the users in the dynamic rule, but any of the users can able to approve it. That is the behavior of the dynamic. If it is selected as a position, position means whichever is the position which is been nominated. Therefore, that particular position, once the workflow will trigger, the notification will be sent to the dynamic rule, and that position will act as a dynamic rule, and the notification will be sent to that particular position. Dynamic rule depends upon the dynamic group and the position. Got that is when we are selecting here as a approved type as a dynamic rule, and the dynamic rule is being configured from the managed object of paste, and when we are configuring the dynamic rule, it depends upon the under the dynamic rule what is the approved type which is being selected. According to that, the notification will be selected. That is one thing. Then we tell me if I in dynamic rule, we also have the dynamic rule. And a few rows in dynamic rule. Are this the same thing? This is the same, but here we can specify the approved type here directly there. Why we are specifying under the dynamic rule? Because you can see various legal entities are there under various legal entities. You can see country specific legal entities you can see. According to the country specific legal entities, they can able to define it. When you go here, you can see best run UK, Germany, France, Brazil, and everything else there. When you go into the approved type, when you go here, you can see approved type. Some will be person, some will be position, some will be dynamic rule, depending upon the country. For the particular country in the dynamic rule, see, dynamic rules are nothing but a specific rule. If you want to keep the type of in that who is being designated under the same rule. Suppose two users are there who have been designated under the same rule and who can be a part of a dynamic rule. In that case, we can able to go under the dynamic rule. We can go and create a dynamic group. And in the dynamic group, we can keep both the users under the dynamic group, which will act as a dynamic rule. Suppose for the payload or for the compensation specialist for the particular country. And that country, we have two users who have been designated as the same level. They have authority to go ahead and do the approval process. That is the reason they can be kept under a single group. And that single group can act as a dynamic group. Outside, externally you. This is the same dynamic group which you are seeing here also. This is nothing different. But we need to understand how the approved type, the designing of the over type is being done and what is the purpose. Now, when we are designing a dynamic rule, I am specifying dynamic versus compensation manager. Compensation manager is a dynamic rule, but it can vary from country to country also. For instance, it can be a single person right. For Belgium, it can be a particular position. For Germany, it can be a dynamic group, where two users they are adding into that particular group. That is the reason. This SAP has designed the layout for the dynamic rule. Dynamic rule in this way that under the approval type, they have kept person, dynamic group, and the position. When we are configuring as a developer or as an implementation consultant, we should have a clarity from the customer that if you want to have this dynamic rule, these are the by default options are there. Where, while defining the dynamic rule, what option we need to take? We need to take as a person or as a dynamic group or as a position. What is? That is the logic behind it. And then comes the position and the position relationship. That is not measured because position, we know the position is already been created in the managed data at position. They have to be object. We are creating the position, those positions. If you are selecting the position here, those positions will be operating here. Position relationship also has some least importance, but we are more focusing on role dynamic group and a dynamic rule, and these are three areas which will be more focusing because we can see these areas frequently in the customer system where we can see the workflow which is already being configured. We can see these are the frequent areas role, dynamic rule and the dynamic group. Approver type and the approval role. Is it clear? Any question? It's clear. For creating a workflow, you will be going into this vertical managed object of a structure, and then we will be starting before going into we have seen it is divided into three parts. That is the approval. Then we have a contributor, and then we have a CCU. Approver, we just started with the approval type and the approval role. Let me also cover up this topic also. That is, while when you are going and creating, we have to specify the workflow ID, the name, and the description. Then comes the reminder in the day. You can see here, apart from the workflow ID, all are not mandatory fields. But what is the purpose of this field? That also we need to understand. Now, if we have a customer criteria which we need to have the remaining days. Why we need to take the remaining days? It generally specifies after how many days of labs period the approval has to be reminded to act on a workflow. Suppose a workflow is been triggered, and we have mentioned here as number of days as 2 days. For example, we entered as a tool. What it means if approvals haven't responded, the workflow approval, this is the approval. Approval, received the notification and approval, haven't responded the workflow request. After 2 days, what will happen? The system will send a reminder. If approval do nothing or this point by giving some comment or something again, the second reminder will be sent after 2 days later. That is the process where we are going into when we are taking a reminder in days. And if the approval is not responding, then we have this relationship to the approval that skip the step or to stop the workflow options will be there. That we will be seeing right now this option. But the purpose of remaining days specifies that after workflow is being triggered, after how many days a notification system generated notification has to be sent to the approval that specifies the number of days here. Then is delegate supported. Is delegate supported means you have a yes or no. It specifies whether the approval can, whoever is the approval can delegate that workflow to someone else. We have seen with the help of a proxy management in the introduction to Masterly Write how they can able to delegate or assign a new proxy user. Right. That is the same which is we are showing here. Then comes with the alternate workflow. What is generally the alternate workflow? Alternate workflow will be triggered. Alternate workflow will be triggered when you are selecting an alternate workflow. That alternate workflow will trigger when it has a feature date. It has that particular action as a feature date. To understand it, to have a more clarity, let us take an example where we have an employee and the employee job information is called has to two reports. One record is something between. Let us take one record is something from. We have one record from 1st January to 1st January 2023 to December 31st December 2020. That is one record. And after that, the another record is from 1st January 24 onwards. That is the another record which is been showing. Two records are there. What is the future record here? Future record is the 1st January 2020 fall into the job information, for example. If there is alternate workflow. If there is alternate, if we are assigned alternate workflow, and it will trigger only when the job employee's job information is changed. If you are changing the employee's job information and are newly called with an effective date, effective start date will be created. That is before January 2020 fall. If we are creating another record before January 2020 fall, this is the future record. Right. Before the future record, an alternate record is being created in the employee's job information. Then in that case, the alternate workflow will trigger. Got. If we are creating the record which is after 1st of January 2020 fall means after the future record, then this original workflow will trigger. The original workflow will trigger because there is no future record at that time. Got it. That is the understanding of the original workflow with the alternate workflow. Although it is not a mandatory field, but if the customer comes up with a scenario, we need to understand the logic behind it, how it works on. Is it clear? Then again, we have the explanation. We can assign the workflow to an explanation path that we would have created. This is also we can able to, that is also least important. And then we have also seen the approval type and the approval role that we have already discussed right now. Further, when you go into the context is applicable when it is an approval, when it is a dynamic role, or if it is a role. When you are selecting something as a role here, it will get activated. Or when we are selecting something as a dynamical. In both the cases, context will be there. Context. What is a context? It determines the approval based on the attributes of that particular subject employee on a data before, after the change. To explain it, let us take when an employee's position is getting changed. The workflow may require an approval from the manager. Employee's position, there is action is performed. Employee's position is getting changed. And for that, an approval is required from the manager of the employee. By specifying this option, that is context, we can determine which manager has to upload the request. Here there are two options of source and the target. The source is something where the manager before the change happened, that is considered as the manager. The new manager is the new manager after the change, that is called, that is coming under the target. Generally, when you go into a real-time system, we can see the context. They will always keep the contact as a source with the manager before the change. And that is what the concept here for the context. It is something like right now current source would be our current manager and target would be like future management. We can say that also depends upon the change. Now you are performing a change, but when the change is being performed, who is the manager before that change? That manager will act as a source C. When the change has been performed, after the change, who is the manager that will consider as a target manager? That is the understanding. Although here also you can see only two tabs are there which are mandatory, but we always, as a consultant, we need to understand all the tabs. What is the importance of it? And the same thing which is also mentioned in the implementation guide also. During the implementation, we will refer those implementation document which will help us. Then comes with the edit transaction. In the edit transaction, we have the option that is no edit, edit with root change, and edit without root change, and edit attachment. No edit generally specifies that when the workflow is being triggered, application will be sent to the server. Therefore, don't have any option to edit it. You only have the option either to approve it or to reject it. If you are configuring something, edit transaction has to know edit that approval. Whoever is the approval in that level don't have the option to go and edit and modify it if they want to do any correction. Now, assuming that in the step 2, we have the edit transaction as this one edit with root change. And here let's take, I am taking something here as attachment only. These are something with the scenario which we are looking up. No edit means he will be receiving the notification, but when he receives the notification, he can only go and either approve it or we can decline it. He can reject that request. The request will be sent back to the post generator. Now we have edit with root change in the second step. If he has approved it, it will go to the second step. The workflow will be sent to the second step to the new approval, whoever is the approval in that level. Edit with root change means what? Edit with root change specifies that here they have an option to edit. Here in this second step, the whoever is the approval, That approval observes that there was some postal code or the PIN code which was mentioned wrongly while doing the and that has not been identified in the first. Second level, they have the managers has observed it. When the manager want to do the correction, they have a edit option. Manager can able to go and do the correction from their end and they can able to submit it. Once the manager will submit it as it is edit with root change, it will not go to the another step. It will validate the entire workflow by going into the previous step. Whatever is the previous step, it will be. The notification will be sent to the previous step and it will. The workflow will be validated and then the flow will be coming from the previous step to this step and to the future step. Next step. That is the meaning of edit with root change. If you are going with the same thing, if you are going with edit without root change under scenario, the manager will do the correction here, do all the correction by updating the record, and once he submitted, it is without root change. It will not go to the previous step, it will go to the next step. That is the difference between the edit with root change and edit without root change, and in a real time we can see mostly. You can see the edit without root change, edit with root change. These are something which they can see. The implementation team would have done it. Then edit. Attachment is something where he has an option to edit it, but simultaneously he has an attachment link also. You can attach the document. That is the supporting document. Also, he can able to attach it. Got. Then we have no approval behavior. This I already discussed about in the reminders, where we have the skip the step or the stop the workflow. According to that, this whatever process setup which we have done, if after to the reminders, if there is no behavior from the approval, whatever is the option which we have chosen according to that, that will act on it. Here also in the real time, we can see generally it goes with either with the skip this step or the stop the file. Then we have something as a relationship to the approval. Let me go here. When I am going a relationship to the approval, we have employee and the initiator. It specifies whether the approval is determined based on the workflow's subject user, that is, an employee or the workflow initiator. According to that, it specifies the relationship to the approval. Quote, for example, if suppose you are the subject, user means you are an employee and I am the initiator. I am making some changes to your profile and it will be sent to the approval. What is the relationship between you and approval? That is you as a subject, user, employee, and approval is the manager for you. But if I am the initiator, if I am only making the changes from my data, then what is the relation between? In that case, I will be at the initiator and the relation is between the initiator and the manager. Here also, you can see by default it will be showing the as a relationship to the approval as employee only. Then comes with the respect to the permission. When it comes to the respect to the permission, it specifies the permissions of the participant to view the workflow fields. whatever is the permission for the participant to view the workflow fields. If it is specified as yes, if it is specified yes means what? The workflow participants, whoever the participants are there in the workflow, can view only the fields which are they have the permission. In the RBP, whatever is the permission which is being granted to them, they can only see those fields only. If you are selecting the report permission as yes, if you are selecting as no means what workflow, participants can view all the fields regardless of the assigned RBP permissions. That is the meaning of taking permission as respect, permission as yes or no. Is it clear? Then we have workflow email configuration. When we come into the workflow email configuration, it determines or it specifies a pre-defined workflow email configuration, workflow email notification, which will be sent to the approval. If you are keeping the workflow email configuration here, say blank, what will happen? SAP has a standard template email notification template. That email notification template will be sent to the approval. That the workflow has been initiated, it is request your approval. That a standard template will be there. That will be sent to the approval if you are not selecting anything from here. But if you are selecting anything from here, from the drop-down list, then what will happen? Whatever is the custom workflow email notification which the customer has configured or which the implementation partner has configured, that template will be sent to the approval. For example, the same requirement we were having 1 year back, where customer has came up with a request that whenever an employee is getting terminated, manager will get a notification. In the workflow, manager will be getting a notification to approve that workflow. And manager will approve it, but when manager will approve it, manager also has some key activities which has to be performed as a part of termination. But what happens? Manager generally keeps all generally for those activities, and that is also getting affected using the offboarding process. To maintain the process, what customer came? Customer come to us and told that they have prepared a checklist, they have prepared a document. And that document has to be sent to the manager before the manager approves it, and after that manager can. When the manager is about to approve, can see that notification. Sorry, that document. But this is the checklist which he has to perform after that termination is being done, then manager can approve it. What we have done, we have a configuration tool that is called as a document generation tool. With the help of document generation tool, we have created the custom workflow email vertical configuration, that is the template, and after creating it, we added those template here and we get this option here, and whenever we are creating a workflow, whoever is the approval, for that approval is the custom template has to be sent because we have to give the checklist. This is the checklist, means handing over the process of the laptop, handing over the process of the stationaries. All this mentioned in the checklist. That will be sent to the manager when the manager receives a notification for the work. The manager will see that checklist before approving that action of termination. In that case, if you are keeping it blank, it will be sent as a custom email template. Is it clear? And then that is only applicable when you want to create a custom email template, but as a part of our workflow. But even though the default, when also, where can we? Default one is been the standard one is the standard one. If they want to have a separate one where which has to be sent from the 8 our admin site, they can able to help create this custom. My question is, where can you see that standard, the template you're saying? If we can see it in a safe system. In the safe system only, in the SuccessFactors system only, we have another one figures in tool. What you are seeing, the standard one, the standard one. Standard one. We can see in the, you have the email template notification now, which I just shown you in the introduction to mastery. Remember that. Yes, it's some default. You set the user something. If customer don't want to utilize that one, they want to have a separate one, they can use the document generation tool. That is one thing which, but if you want to have the customer, first we have to configure it and we have to do the mapping, then only it will be showing in the workflow email configuration drop-down list. Now it is showing something as a metadata link which is been as created. That is the thing it is showing here. If you're keeping it blank means whatever, this is the standard one that will be saying while setting up the workflow. These are the important what you call headings which we need to focus. Approval type and the approval role is the mandatory one where we need to go and select. We have seen the role, the dynamic group, the dynamic role. How it will there? It if you have a proper understanding as a support consultant. Also, there are some requirements which comes where the workflow is not getting triggered to a particular user. Why that user is not getting a notification? To investigate first of all, what is the workflow? How the workflow is being configured? What are the approval types which is being taken? Go into the approval type. Is the user is a part of that approval type or not? That we can only check if we have a proper understanding of all the approval types. How and where it is being configured. Now we have seen for the dynamic group, for the dynamic role, for the role. Even for the role. Also, if the user is not getting, we need to check the proper email ID is valid or not. Employee is active or not. That is one thing. If it is a part of, if it is a dynamic group, then we need to check that user is a part of dynamic group or not. If it is a dynamic role, we need to check that user under the dynamic role. What is the approval type? Is that approval type? The user is mapped to the approval type under the dynamic role or not. That will help us to go for the investigation and to explain to the customer that this is a reason why the workflow is not been triggered for that particular user for the approval. This is about the high-level explanation which we have gone in the today's session. Similarly, when I go into this, all we have done for the approval. Now, when we go into the contributor also, although we can see in a real time, the approval sections will be there and the CC role will be there. They will always keep the contributor part. They are not keeping in the contributor. But in the contributor, What are the additional part which we can see? The person, the old dynamic or dynamic group position. All these things are coming from the approval only, but the new one is the person. If contributor, if you can specify any, somebody has a person, we can able to select that person from the list here. From the list here, that is possible. And that is coming under the contributor. If we are going into the CC role, now in the CC role, when you go and C role, dynamic group person will be their position, and additionally we can see external email is there. When you click on external email means somebody you want to include in the CC role which is outside the SuccessFactors system. That also it, which is possible when you want to include somebody with the help of an external email. That is also possible. This is the basic understanding and the difference between approval, the interpreter, and the CC role. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@therightuptalk.com.